Today's episode is sponsored by Anchor. My cousin recommended this app to me, and I thought this was an app about boats or anchors for sale or something, but Anchor is a completely free and easy way to start your own podcast. All of the tools are laid out for you, from recording to editing to even adding voice messages from listeners. You can also podcast from your phone or computer. Wait, there's more. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more services. No tedious individual uploading and sharing. And the best part, you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That is the free Anchor app, or go to anchor.fm. Hello everyone, my name is Frank Anthony and welcome to Let Me Be Frank. So we are on episode 8 today. We're slowly closing in on season 1, and then there's just going to be a 1-month break. I have a lot of different projects going on at once, and I have school, and with school I go for 3 months straight and then I get a month off. I'm also working on a book. That's one of my other projects. I started the YouTube videos again, and then I have the podcast and more, like the website and everything. There's a lot going on in general, so I need to make sure that I give myself appropriate breaks with each project here and there so that I don't go completely crazy. So I hope you guys don't miss me for too long, because then I'll be back with season 2. Gives me some time as well to plan that season. So today's topic, I've been a little bit nervous to go for it. I was going to talk about something else originally, and then I thought, like, this is kind of like the elephant in the room topic where everyone's been talking about it online, and I was going back and forth on whether or not I should even discuss it, because I know there's so many different opinions on the matter, and it's nearly impossible to have everyone agree with you on this, because it feels like we're so divided on this matter. And so today's topic is Black, Blue, and All Lives Matter. Specifically, it seems like it's Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter, but I would say that Blue Lives Matter kind of ties in with the All Lives Matter a little bit, and I can get into that later. But I noticed that I feel like the majority of the people that are in these debates, I feel like kind of want the same thing. And what I mean by that is that the majority of people care about human life in general. Someone in your personal life that you're close to, if they suddenly died, you wouldn't be jumping for joy about it. A typical human reaction would be to be sad and upset. But with some of the debate going on, there seems to be this disconnect between two people who end up believing in the same thing. So when you saw the title of this episode, you might have been thinking, what do you believe in, Frank? And I know I have listeners who are on both sides of the fence and in the middle. And with many issues, I try to see from both sides and kind of keep a neutral view. Like I said earlier, I was just a little bit nervous to talk about this because I know that not everyone's going to agree with me, or maybe you'll agree with me on certain points and not others. And this is just me, I feel like, really looking at it from all different angles and just my honest opinion on the matter, because this is Let Me Be Frank. We're here to be honest and all that. So I'm going to confess that when Black Lives Matter entered the mainstream media, maybe even when Black Lives Matter became an official thing, I was a firm believer in All Lives Matter. I think my thought process at the time was that I cared about all lives. And I know when some people state this phrase, that's where they're coming from. But I also know when some people who say it, they might just not like black people. And am I saying, are those people right? No. But I'm also interested in learning about where both sides are coming from. For example, like I believe in abortion, but I also understand why people would be against it. I don't agree with them, but I could see where they're coming from. And I was the same way when it came to those who preached Black Lives Matter. I wanted to understand where they were coming from, the other side at the time. And over time, with George Floyd and everything coming up now, there's been some really good, I think there's been some really good analogies that have been used to explain Black Lives Matter more. And ultimately now I lean more towards Black Lives Matter over All Lives Matter. I think one important rule when listening to someone discuss their beliefs, if and this is if you're asking them why they believe in what they believe in, it's important to what I had to do when I started learning more about Black Lives Matter is I had to put my pride on the back burner, because someone might say something that you want to jump down their throat and interject and be like, no, you're wrong, but just try to listen first. I did that with this discussion, and then I realized, oh, this actually makes sense. A good example that I can talk about is from my childhood. So I used to play a lot of basketball as a kid. I was the kid on the street that owned a basketball hoop. There was another basketball hoop at a school down the street, but high school kids and adults, they would play on that one all the time. Like younger kids like myself and my friends, we were never going to get on that court. It just wasn't going to happen. They were always there. So this was a really good space to have the younger kids go to, and at least 20 to 30 kids would come in front of my house to play with me at this basketball hoop, and I ended up becoming friends with most of them. Well, there was a neighbor that one would identify as a racist, you can say. And I'm not talking about how anyone on the internet can be called racist for literally any reason these days, it seems, but this guy was the type of guy who would say that he would shoot any N-word that stepped onto his property. So with this individual, there was a clear hatred for African Americans. And he had a son that his son would want to hang out with all of us. And we would try a little bit, but then he would say some things that were a little bit off. Looking back now, I can't blame that kid 100% because he's learning what his parents are teaching him. And I also forgot to mention too, this neighbor lived a couple of houses from me, so he has a clear view of the front of my house where all of us would play basketball. So one night, because some of us would be playing basketball from morning. I would start in the morning, and this could go all the way till at night. I think I would start around like 7 a.m. and I usually would play until like 9 at night or 9:30 at night. I was a very active kid, the good old days. But one night the neighbor's son had snuck over to hang out with all of us. And I guess one of his sisters ratted on him to their father because before we knew it, one of my black friends was dead on the ground. And this was the 90s. There wasn't that option to film what was going on. We didn't have social media like we do today to post injustice or any of that type of stuff. It kind of just laid quiet. And you might be wondering that, well, your neighbor could have shot anyone. And you're right, he could have shot all of us, but he didn't. And more importantly, he didn't have to shoot any of us. And you might be wondering, well, this doesn't have anything to do with a cop, because that's kind of where these debates have been going. But the point of the story is that I feel like way more people, like, I don't know the exact statistics for people who are dying from a gun, but what I do know is that way more people are being killed for being black compared to people who are targeted with a gun for being white. And like I said, maybe there's some cases out there where someone has been shot for being white, but over the years there's been so much racism towards African Americans, and honestly, it has not improved much since. Everyone's life does matter, especially those that are close to you. We're human. We're going to consider those close to us more important than people we don't know. But my friend's mom lost her son at 9, 10 years old. My mother didn't have to have a funeral for me. I never had to worry about someone gunning me down because I was this little white boy. It was completely senseless for this life to be lost. And I think people, especially who are African Americans, are just sick of it. And I don't blame them. So before I get into, I'm going to go to Blue Lives Matter next, but before I do, I think we're going to take a quick commercial break, so we will be right back. And we are back. Okay, so what about Blue Lives, our police officers? Before I get more into them, I've noticed that personal experience is going to have a play in our beliefs. For example, if you had a parent who's a police officer and they're a good cop, it's more likely that you're going to honor and respect Blue Lives more. If you're someone who has lost family members at the hands of cops because of the color of their skin, I would say you're more likely to believe in Black Lives Matter, because I believe that experience helps shape our beliefs. The cop who killed George Floyd, and I say the cop and not his name because when you want to distance yourself from a problem person, you remove their name from the equation. It gives them less power. And I think as a society, we're good at over promoting the perpetrator and not showing as much recognition for the victims. But that's a whole other discussion. Not in the same way, but I've had some issues with police officers. But I also believe that we have good cops and not so good cops. The not so good cops, like in any profession, they should face consequences for acting unethical. I thought that Blue Lives Matter was just something people said to oppose Black Lives Matter, kind of like All Lives Matter, because I think that's more of a saying and not an actual organization. But Blue Lives Matter actually is an organization that started a year after Black Lives Matter, towards the end of 2014. I think that police shouldn't be attacked for who they are. I also believe that Blue Lives Matter kind of diminishes the Black Lives Matter movement. That's why I think that All Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter, they kind of start to mesh together a little, because it starts to make it look like that anyone can say that their life matters when your own life hasn't been compromised specifically for the color of your skin that you're born with and can't control. I decided to take a break from recording after the first commercial break because I wanted to do a little bit of research when it came to police officer deaths and the deaths of those from police officers, and I just wanted to see the comparison that there, and it was pretty interesting. So I looked into 2019 because we're not done with this year yet, and with everything going on too, I think it kind of messes up the stats a little bit. But with 2019, I found that there were 89 police officers who were killed in line of duty incidents in the United States. 48 of those were criminal acts, and 41 died as a result of an accident. How I feel though, like the big picture here, 89 officers died last year, and that is not a good thing in general. Like, people shouldn't, like, that many people shouldn't be dying. To look into civilians who were shot to death by the police, there were 1,004 deaths, which is obviously a much bigger number. I have to backtrack on, so something that I said earlier, I did make a little bit of a mistake when it came to race, because I think I said something about African Americans dying more than white people by the police, but there were actually, last year there was 370 who died that were white and 235 that died that were black, meaning that more people who were shot by the police were white. Also, though, to talk on the other side of it, I think it's important to look at the percentages of race in the United States population as a whole last year. So last year, there about 76% of the United States population was white and 13% were black. So I would assume that percentages between deaths and population would fall somewhat in line with one another. Like, if anything, the police percentages should be less, and they should be a good amount less than the actual population percents. And there was also 202 deaths by police that they couldn't identify the race. So I'm focusing on the 802 individuals shot by the police where their race was known. So out of those 802, 46% were white, which isn't good. I mean, 46% is a high percentage, but it's also less than their population percent. Now, with black people, it was 29%, which is more than double of their population percentage. And that's where I think the issue starts to arise. I think that's where some of this uproar is coming from. I also did look into, I was curious about Hispanic deaths. And with that, because in the population for Hispanics is 18% in the United States last year, and from being shot by the police, 18% was the population percentage, and then it was about 20% of Hispanics who were shot by the police, which is a little bit more. It's also a little bit more in line. It's not double like it is for African Americans. I know that this is kind of cutting it close towards the end of the show, but we are going to take another commercial break. We will be right back. And we are back. So the last part of this is going to touch a little bit on All Lives Matter, which, compared to Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter, All Lives Matter isn't an official organization that was created by specific individuals. So it's just, yeah, now this was something that I had believed in originally, and I think that a lot of people do believe in because of what I said earlier in the episode, where I think they're thinking more in the sense of caring about others. And I'm not trying to like give some sort of excuse to those people. I just think that's where the mindset is, and I understand that mindset because I used to have that mindset. So I can kind of relate to it, but it's not how I feel as time went on. I think one of the main controversies with All Lives Matter that gets brought up a lot is whether or not All Lives Matter is racist. I think with Blue Lives Matter that also was brought up as well, but it's definitely with All Lives Matter that gets brought up, that issue of whether it's racist or not. So I decided to, because I know what racist is, but I feel like it helps actually finding the exact definition and kind of like dissecting the idea a little bit. So the definition of being racist is a person who shows or feels discrimination or prejudice against people of other races, or who believes that a particular race is superior to another. So, would I say that All Lives Matter is racist? I it's a tough call, I think. And I think what doesn't make it easy either is I think because not an entire specific race is supporting All Lives Matter. Like you have African Americans who also support I All Lives Matter. You have white Americans that support Black Lives Matter, and I think that's what makes the situation more gray and why also these fights are erupting so big. Do I believe that All Lives Matter kind of diminishes the Black Lives Matter movement? Yes, I do think that it kind of plays down the importance of speaking up for African Americans and the injustice against them. Do I think they're racist? Maybe certain members, but I think there's also members who I wouldn't say are racist. I think just thinking about this whole topic, honestly, in general, it's so exhausting. I feel like so many people are also just done with this. Like, they're just so tired of the fighting. And I wish it, I don't know, I wish life was easier for all of us to just get along better and be able to help one another more. Like, being kind to one another, it's something that shouldn't be difficult to do. Like, it should be easy to support one another. So why are we making it so much more complicated than it needs to be? You know, that's just my thought on it. That, and this kind of brings back to what I said towards the beginning, how I think a lot of people, they want the same end goal. We don't want, no one wants people to die, but yet I think it's because the way we're all believing in what we believe in is what's making it a little bit more complicated, and what's making it more gray, and what's making more people on social media and just in life fight with one another. But yeah, I'm probably going to end today's topic a little bit early because this topic gets so depressing and tiring to talk about for a long period of time. But my end thoughts on all of this is that anyone who needs help, I want to help as much as I can. I actually just remembered too, I want to add one more thing. Someone on Facebook, they made a good point on something where they had talked about how everything with George Floyd, how there might be some people out there that are fighting for this. They're almost kind of doing it as like a trend, and that I don't agree with. If you don't understand this whole situation and don't see the wrongdoing in it, then I don't think you should be fighting for it. If you're just kind of doing it for like the hashtags and to kind of like fit in with certain groups, and then the next week you're just kind of over it. Like if you really want to make a difference and really want to fight for things you believe in, like definitely, stand behind it. That's just my little thought on that, because I thought that was interesting that, yeah, there's always going to be some people who just do something to do it, but they don't understand the situation as a whole. I would like to say thank you to today's sponsor. I would like to say thank you to each and every single one of you who are listening today. It means the world to me. I want to thank Sakura HC, who does the intro music for season 1 episodes, and Tokyo Music Walker, who does the outro music that you're going to hear after I'm done rambling on about all this. I'm going to have social links in the episode description for certain things like my YouTube channel and my Patreon to help support the podcast, the merch store, etc. My website, which is frankanthonybooks.com. So be sure to check out all that stuff if you haven't already. And yeah, I wish you guys a great rest of the day. I hope you guys are staying safe, because as people protest, make sure, you're wearing your mask and such if you're going to be in a big group, just in case. You never know. You could catch something. I saw some spike rises and stuff in other states, so just try to stay safe. And if, like I said, if you believe in something strongly, I believe you should fight for that right. I feel like you should fight for what you believe in. If you think something that's happening is wrong, I think you should definitely stand up to it. So yeah, have a great day, everyone. Bye.